Hello and welcome back to the Sacred Plant Healing Secrets Exposed. I'm your host, John Malanca. Thank you for joining us for episode 2, How It Fights Disease in Your Body. In our first episode, we learned the sacred plant is actually Cannabis sativa, a medicinal plant that's been used for thousands of years to heal the human body. We exposed that the scheduling of cannabis as a dangerous narcotic was politically motivated. Blocking the plant from all scientific research has made it nearly impossible to translate cannabis into standardized medicine. We met Kristen, a cannabis researcher who put her lupus and rheumatoid arthritis into remission by juicing the raw cannabis leaves and flowers. We heard the incredible story of my father-in-law, Stan Rutner, who was given weeks to live until cannabis put his stage 4 cancer into remission. We also met Patricia Crone, a cancer patient who helped us reveal the government's hypocritical position on cannabis. Coming up, we'll also find out if Patricia's doctors approve of her using cannabis to fight her terminal lung cancer. In this episode, we'll share the secrets of the endocannabinoid system, an endogenous system within our bodies that produces our own internal cannabinoids. We'll show you how the plant acts upon our endocannabinoid system to reduce anxiety, pain, and PTSD. Our experts will teach you about the various compounds in the cannabis plant and how they all work together to create what is known as the entourage effect. You'll learn how the entourage effect works with our endocannabinoid system to reduce pain. You'll meet people whose lives were being destroyed by painful conditions until they discovered the sacred plant. Let's begin with Dr. Dustin Sulak, an expert on the endocannabinoid system.
This is a system that kind of spans the whole body and allows this mind-body wholeness and interaction and coordination. It's comparable to the endorphin system. So a lot of people now think that when they go running and they feel good afterwards, they get the runner's high. That's because their brain is making substances that are similar to opium or morphine that are called endorphins. And that system was only discovered about 20 years before the endocannabinoid system. But a lot of us just accept that as normal. Oh, I'm making endorphins now, that's why I feel so good. Well, it's actually been proven more recently that a lot of these good feelings that come after things like exercise, sex, social interaction, those are actually endocannabinoid effects that our brains are making. So Tylenol has been used for decades to treat pain, and we haven't known the mechanism of action of how Tylenol works to treat pain up until the last few years. It's actually an endocannabinoid mediated mechanism. So one of the metabolic products of Tylenol after you take it is interacting with cannabinoid receptors to reduce pain. More and more, there's drugs that we've been using that we didn't know how they worked that we're finding out they have cannabinoid effects.
The reason that cannabis has an effect on us is that we have cannabinoid receptors. These receptor sites are everywhere except the brainstem, which is why no one has ever died from an overdose of cannabis, and that's why the DEA's chief administrative law judge, Francis Young, in 1988, in his finding of fact in a cannabis rescheduling hearing, said that cannabis was one of the safest therapeutic agents known to man. He said that basically it was obscene for the government to block the use of this medicine because it was so safe.
The unifying theme, it seems like, is the holistic theme, the health of the whole animal. The endocannabinoid system really is a very integrative system of homeostasis that seems to act on just about every physiological system we know to promote the well-being of the whole organism.
It's astounding to me that a plant like cannabis that has an entire system within the human body to receive it, the endocannabinoid system, isn't already a mainstream medicine, because there's no other example in the history of medicine or within the herbal tradition of a plant that is essential for the functioning of the human organ system.
As our experts explained, the discovery of the endocannabinoid system was crucial for understanding why the cannabis plant interacts with our bodies and why it's so effective for so many conditions. Let's check in with Patricia Crone. The results of her latest scan showed that her cancer is spreading quickly. Patricia wants to learn all she possibly can about cannabis and how it could potentially extend or even save her life. In episode 4, we'll go into more detail on how the sacred plant fights against cancer. Let's see what she finds out.
I have to say I was amazed by the number of doctors I asked about something which is of potentially enormous importance for oncology, and yet they hadn't even heard of it. It's amazing. So I went to NYU to see a young doctor who wrote his dissertation on cannabis. Maybe you could tell us what cannabinoids are. We all know what cannabis is. Cannabis is marijuana. It's a word I cannot pronounce.
Right.
Cannabis is easier. But what are cannabinoids?
And those were the active ingredients of cannabis. And those were isolated by Raphael Mechoulam in 1964. And since that time, we've discovered there's also cannabinoids that occur inside the human body and actually many living systems all the way down to sea squirts. But somehow insects and other groups didn't evolve these things, but they're also called cannabinoids, but they're called endocannabinoids. Mm-hmm. You know, we've discovered there's also a signaling system in the brain and nervous system called cannabinoid signaling system. Uh-huh. Look at this animation here.
Oh, there we have a beautiful plant.
Yeah, so cannabis plant turns right into a neuron, you see, into the brain.
Yeah.
This is Scientific Americans, 2004. There's this entire massive cannabinoid receptor system in the brain.
What are cannabinoid receptors?
They're one of the most abundant proteins in the brain, and all major organs have cannabinoid receptors.
The way that cannabis helps is through a mechanism called retrograde inhibition. And by that, I mean it slows down the speed of neurotransmission. And attention deficit disorder kind of goes along with PTSD. I mean, the same mechanism of action tends to explain why cannabis is so useful in treating people with attention deficit disorder. I've had any number of patients that have said they started in cannabis when they were 14 and 15, and their grades went from D's and C's to A's and B's because of that.
The neurochemical, neuroscientific angle was the first big sort of understanding of what cannabinoids were doing, and it sort of helped to validate all the ideas. Okay, they're involved in pain processing, because they're involved in the circuits in the brain that know how you get pain from your finger going all the way up to your spinal cord into your brain, and then the way that the brain sort of tamps things down so you aren't always in pain, especially if you're being chased by a tiger. You don't have time to stand there and, oh, I stubbed my toe, I gotta say ow. No, you're gonna run. And that's your brain's way of tamping down pain, and that's cannabinoid mediated. There's these systems: pain, appetite, mood, inflammation, memory, muscle tone. Cannabinoids on the neurons involved in those are important to regulating those.
Within the plant, there are many different compounds called cannabinoids. The most studied cannabinoids are THC and CBD, but there's also THCA, CBN, CBG, and countless others. We will learn more about THCA in episode 7. Each cannabinoid has its specific therapeutic effects, and it can be targeted for specific diseases. In addition to the cannabinoids, the plant also contains terpenes and flavonoids. Terpenes are the fragrant oils that give cannabis its distinctive aroma. Terpenes can be found in many other fruits, vegetables, and plants as well. Flavonoids are powerful antioxidants with anti-inflammatory and immune system benefits. They are phytonutrients that can be found in almost all fruits and vegetables, so the entourage effect describes the way all these different compounds in the plant combine to boost therapeutic effects. This is called whole plant medicine, and it's much more therapeutic and much safer than the single molecule drugs developed by pharma. Let's go to our experts now to learn more about the entourage effect.
Dr. Ethan Russo calls something called the entourage effect, which is the totality of all of the cannabinoids and terpenes acting collectively. I'm the number one prescriber of dronabinol or Marinol in Santa Barbara County, and I prescribed it to a number of people, and several people have found it useful. But many people find that, one, it's way more expensive than cannabis, number two, it doesn't work as well, and number three, it has more side effects. So why would you use Marinol instead of cannabis? And the California Narcotics Association says, well, Marinol is prescription cannabis. They couldn't be more wrong. It has one cannabinoid in it, one therapeutic chemical in it. Cannabis has over 480 chemicals in it. Many of them are therapeutic. And the more we find out about this plant, the more disturbing it is that we've treated it with such disdain since essentially 1937.
It's a full spectrum of molecules. It's not one isolated chemical like you get from the drug companies. And that's why cannabis is typically not addictive to people, especially the non-psychoactive compounds such as CBD.
The main thing I would be aware of is number one is the synthetic. So that we've already got pharmaceutical companies that are starting to produce synthetic cannabis products like Marinol. That's one of many. There's dozens literally now of synthetic marijuana products. And that's why I say marijuana, because one of the names is Marinol. And that's where they got it. It was from marijuana, but it's cannabis. But they're trying to mimic the natural effects of cannabis, but with a synthetic drug. And so what I would warn people is that anytime that you try to improve on what God the Creator has done, you're probably going to take a step down instead of a step up. And so I would always try to focus on people getting it naturally. Get the plant, don't get the synthetic version of the plant, because it never works better.
It's the combination of all about 500 molecules in the cannabis plant that give us all its benefits, and all the terpenes, which are small cannabinoids, and flavonoids and other alkaloids. They all have medicinal value.
Anytime you extract a single molecule from a plant, you can increase the risks of side effects and, to some extent, empower or reduce the efficacy of the treatment. With cannabis especially, some of these over-the-counter products that are made with the whole herb are a lot more effective than the individual compounds extracted from the plant. And now we have the science to prove that these multitude of compounds are working synergistically with each other to enhance the benefits and decrease the side effects compared to, say, just a purified THC. So when we're treating patients, we want to use the whole plant. And of course, we want the whole plant to remain in the public domain so patients can continue to cultivate it themselves and have a cost-effective healthcare solution. That's crucial.
You've heard so far that the sacred plant can address many disease states, from epilepsy to autoimmune conditions to PTSD and cancer. In episode 3, we'll look at its anti-seizure properties. But now let's focus on one of the most pervasive issues which cannabis can address: pain. Pain is often associated with inflammation. So let's learn how the sacred plant can address pain and reduce inflammation in a more effective way than pharmaceutical drugs.
At the beginning, we didn't treat pain. Pain is part of the disease, be strong. And then we understood that chronic pain destroys human life. And actually, people should not live with chronic pain. Pain is a mechanism to show you that something is wrong. And I think the pendulum has gone a bit too far to the other side, and you overtreat pain with drugs that can be abused and can cause death. So for this, as I said, cannabis is a nice option, much more safer. But still, I think that people should be treated for pain. There's no reason to suffer chronic pain. But there's no reason to not suffer any pain and then die for an overdose.
One of the pain areas that it seems to be very helpful for are connective tissue autoimmune disorders like fibromyalgia, complex regional pain syndrome, reflex sympathetic dystrophy. All of these things benefit from the use of cannabis.
There is enough science that has been done that shows that even in randomized controlled trials, the biggest gold standard, that we can show this is effective when you give somebody a placebo or you give them real cannabis or cannabis devoid and they don't know which one's which. We can show that you can reduce muscle spasms. We can show you can reduce pain in 800 size patient trials going on in multiple sites.
So about 70% of our patients have chronic pain that have failed conventional treatment. And a lot of them have other conditions as well, like PTSD is frequently comorbid with chronic pain. And patients are using the same medicine to treat the pain and to treat the PTSD and to treat the insomnia and a lot of their other symptoms.
We see results that doctors don't see usually. We have patients who've had chronic pain, who've been on disability for 20 years, suddenly getting off their medications, going back to work, getting their lives back. And that's very commonplace for us. We see that every day, all the time, with a variety of diagnoses, which usually physicians don't expect any good results.
Elena suffers from severe nerve pain. For many years, she has suffered thinking that pharmaceutical drugs were the only way to alleviate her pain. Then she discovered the sacred plant. Let's join Elena as she hosts a planting day with a local cannabis collective.
Hi, come on in. It's good to see you too. Hi. How you doing? Come on.
I'm a member and founder of the statewide collective and manager of it, and we started it with the idea of just having dose-tested, safe medicine for patients that are reliable. They can always take the same amount, get specific advice from a physician on what they should be taking, and it works great. I mean, they're taking repeatable dosages. If it's not good for them, they can consult with their physician on getting a different dosage, different delivery method, different ratio of CBD to THC, and we're doing different testing of terpenes and doing different extracts with same ratio but different terpene profiles, which have different effects in their own right, and it's been great.
I know you want 4 feet apart and all of this stuff.
They're extracted using a supercritical CO2 extractor, very clean green technology, no solvents or anything like that, and then we then test that extract, dilute it so it's not too strong for the patient, and put it in a measured spray bottle so the patient's taking a set dosage with each pump of the sprayer. And we have it set at 2 milligrams of spray, and it's 2 milligrams of CBD. It could be 2 milligrams of THC if it's an equal ratio, or if it's high ratio, it's going to have very little THC in it.
All right, so we can probably put 2 or 3 in there, and we maybe can.
We have 2 different CBD strains here. This is a high ratio CBD named Oracle. It's about a 24-to-1 ratio of CBD to THC. We have an Amrita here, which is a 2-to-1 ratio of CBD to THC. This one is for people very sensitive to THC. It's applicable for a lot of things like seizure disorders, anxiety, inflammation. The Amrita with a little bit more THC is better for a lot of pain-related issues, and we're giving these here to Elena to grow for the collective, and she'll grow them out and we'll turn them into a dosed extract for her, specifically to her symptoms, and we're doing that with a lot of people that are members of the collective.
I was going to say, if you're going to plant that,
Is this a good area?
Yeah, that's a good area because she's going. This is CBD. It's the number 2 CBD, so it's for pain, and I take it for nerve pain. And within just a few seconds of me spraying, I use 4 sprays under my tongue, and the nerve pain that I've been feeling for the last almost 20 years has gone. It just goes away. It just goes away. So even the medication that I take for nerve pain, that's really not working because I still have nerve pain. And it goes from my neck down across my shoulder blade, down my arm to my elbow, and then plinks around it there. Goes down my hand to my little finger. It used to be half this finger, now it's all this finger, and half my middle finger. It feels like I'm hitting my funny bone all the time. But this stops it. It just stops it. And that's it. In probably less than 20 seconds, the pain I have in my elbow now is gonna go. That's it. It makes my day so much nicer. And I used to take a lot of different kinds of pain pills, and they became more of a problem than the pain. So that was not a solution. And I eventually got off those. I just got off those on my own. I don't feel any high from this. It's just no pain. And it's very much a relief.
It seems insane that people will take an isolated chemical pharmaceutical painkiller like opioids and think that that's medicine and that that's okay and that that's healthy, but yet they will look upon cannabis with some sort of disdain, as if that's unnatural. They've got it all backwards. The opioids are unnatural. They're isolated, they're concentrated, they're made artificially, they're synthesized in a lab somewhere. Whereas cannabis is the most natural medicine, really, that you can find in nature. It's the perfect example of perfect medicine.
You know, each year in the United States, we have over 500,000 people die in alcohol-related accidents. But alcohol's legal. Each year in the United States, the FDA admits on their own website that 100,000 people die from drugs that they've approved and are properly prescribed. But I'm not aware of any deaths from overdosing on cannabis.
It's wonderful to see how patients like Elena do not need to be dependent on addictive prescription medicines to control their pain. In episode 5, we will explain the landscape of collective and dispensaries who provide medical cannabis to patients and expose the obstacles that patients often face to access it. Let's go to Los Angeles, California to Dr. Alan Frankel and some of his patients. Dr. Frankel has had some wonderful success using cannabis in his integrative practice at Greenbridge Medical.
And what's the most common ailment we all have? You know, spinning, anxiety, worrying, whether it's nighttime and we call it insomnia. I mean, how many people out there want these simple things treated? And Since I've seen, I won't say how many, a lot of people receive 1 or 2 milligrams of whole plant CBD, and you can't worry anymore. I mean, they come in here wrecked for lots of reasons, and they come back and tell me they can't worry. It's like one of my parlor tricks. I mean, right? Try what we were worrying about earlier. Try worry, and it's like you missing gear. And worrying, to me, should have an ICD-9 diagnostic code. We accept it as normal human behavior. It goes away with 1 to 2 milligrams of whole plant CBD. It's not a matter of, people say I'm a cannabis physician, but I'm an internist who's now added some very useful tools to my toolbox. And your job as a doctor or a nurse, or hopefully anybody working anywhere, is to do 20% better than you think you could ever do. And that one patient that's in front of you. That's it.
Well, like everyone, I started off using cannabis. I don't want to say recreationally. I was trying to find myself a fix, in the sense that I knew that I had anxiety issues and I knew I had PTSD, and I just wanted something that wasn't a pill that would make me feel a certain way, and then later on I wouldn't know exactly what happened or how I behaved. So originally I started off taking very low THC medicine with very high CBD, and it helped me with everyday functionality, no more Valium, no more Xanax, and I was really great. And a few weeks ago I was diagnosed with degenerative disc disease, and I originally took the Vicodin that they gave me, and everyone around me hated me because it altered my personality so much. I brought it up to Dr. Frankel's attention, and we discussed getting me on a different kind of regimen. So I'm actually taking something that's a 1-to-1 ratio that has equal parts CBD and THC in it, and I have been Vicodin free for the last 5 days with minimal pain. I was a little concerned just because I talked to a lot of other people as well, so I was like, I don't want to feel, excuse me, but loopy. And not all of us are, Beavis and Butthead stoners. So I was like, and I was thinking that in my head, and when I took it, I gave myself enough time so that I could see how I would respond and how my body would react, and lo and behold, I felt no difference between the 0 and 5, other than I didn't experience a lot of the pain was gone. So and my anxiety was gone at the same time. It was one of those things where I was like, I was afraid of this for absolutely no reason. This is the number 0. So this is, it's actually a 14-to-1 ratio. It has 14 milligrams of CBD in it and 1 milligram of THC. So you shake it up every time you take it. You open the bottle. Every spray is a dose. So you spray it under your tongue. I'm very honest with my doctors and surgeons and everyone else I've talked to. It's like, this is part of my regimen, and they've been incredibly supportive and understanding, and they kind of give me kudos because in the last 9 months I've lost approximately 90 pounds, and I've used this as a supplement, in the sense where I know that there are dietary aids for it as well. So
it's the other 85% of the population who are coming. 99, virtually 100% of my new patients are not coming in to smoke. Either they've never smoked, or they smoked in college, and they're coming in for dosed medicine. They're sick. They're sicker than my internal medicine practice that I did for 26 years. I'm seeing the sickest patients ever.
It's a big difference when you get an actual packet with you that lets you know, this is my dosing and administration guide, and wow, this is what a terpene is. I didn't know any of this. Oh, wow. Oh, so it's one of those things where a lot of people, they get very excited about this knowledge. So this is why we fight, and this is why we try to make change, because there's so many other people who don't have this knowledge, and who have, the medicine is accessible to them, but a lot of them are maybe afraid, or it's something new and it's something different, and the stigma. A lot of patient members in the collective that I belong to, they're in their 50s and their 60s. They're my mom and dad who are going through these ailments that they didn't anticipate having. And they have the stigma, well, Cheech and Chong and all of this, and it's become where, no, this is medicine, and we're trying to change the face of cannabis, and it's because of people like you and me and the doctor and everyone else, we can collectively change the face of cannabis if we start educating ourselves and talking about it.
Are you enjoying today's show so far? Are you learning a lot of great information? Do you want to join our movement and support our mission to inform the world on the truth about cannabis? then please consider supporting our cause by owning this complete series so you can watch it again and share it with a loved one now or in the future. Your support allows us to continue researching the sacred plant and spreading our findings for free. Also, a portion of each sale gets donated to charities that are helping people every day to find relief for their pain and to live a longer and more vibrant life. So simply click the banner below to join the movement and support our mission. Thanks in advance, as people like you who are truly helping to change the world.
The human body never evolved to consume large quantities of isolated, concentrated, single chemicals. That's what the drug companies give you. A psychiatric drug, antidepressant, a blood pressure drug, what have you, a painkiller. That's why they're dangerous and addictive, and they have other horrible side effects. Your body expects a full spectrum of molecules to be consumed together.
There is compelling evidence that cannabis is a much safer alternative than the addictive pain medications that are offered to patients. In fact, states that approve cannabis for medical use see a large drop-off in prescriptions for pain medications. Coming up later, we will show you how cannabis could help solve one of the biggest crises our country is facing today, the opioid epidemic. As we saw in episode 1, there's always been a political and economic motivation to keep the sacred plant illegal. Unfortunately, the patients are the ones who are suffering, while the pharmaceutical companies make billions in profits. Patricia Schwartz is a scientist, but also a patient who suffered for years from chronic bladder infections. Let's see what happened when Patricia discovered the sacred plant.
Back in 1991, I developed a chronic bladder condition. I thought it was a bladder infection, but it didn't go away. And then I worked with this doctor for a few years, and he tried various medications on me and kept taking a culture looking for there must be something in there that's infecting you or something. And finally, he tried something on me called electrocauterization, where they make you drink like a gallon of water, and then they strap you down to a table and put electrodes in your bladder. They wouldn't get away with doing that in Abu Ghraib. It was really horrible. And then that lasted about 6 weeks. And then it was back to square one, so I was starting to get desperate. And then the rest of my health started falling apart, and I started getting depressed and post-traumatic, and I couldn't sleep, and I got fibromyalgia.
My name is John Schwartz, and I'm a professor of theoretical physics at the California Institute of Technology. So I work on very mathematical aspects of theoretical physics, which are very far removed from the kinds of concerns we're discussing here, which have to do with biology and medicine. But I've become interested in it because I've learned from my wife that medical marijuana has been very helpful for her. She had some serious medical issues, which led to her dropping out of graduate school for a while. She was a graduate student in physics at Caltech.
We drive to Colorado every summer. And the years when I had that was awful, because it's a stretch of Utah where there's 100 miles without a rest stop. Oh, God. I could not make it, because that's the one nerve in your body you can't ignore. It just takes over your brain. So we had some terrible drives through Utah those years. And then finally someone turned me on a pot, and I noticed, wow, when I have to go and I can put it off. And then I started noticing, oh, now I'm actually going. And then one day I noticed, oh, that felt good. And that was like the first satisfying pee I had in like 4 years. And now, every time I go, I'm like, oh, that's so nice to be able to do that again. Even now, years and years and years later, I'm still marveling over how wonderful it is when it all works, the satisfaction you get, because I went for years just living my life around. If I went to the supermarket, I knew where the bathroom was in every supermarket, because I couldn't even go to buy milk without having urgency and having to go. And it was just made my life hell. So marijuana released me from hell. And then when I was released from hell, then I could start thinking of things other than how am I going to handle my pain today. I went back to school. I finished my PhD. I made a big website on superstring theory. And then I started looking for a grant to continue my website, and they discovered the Federal Drug-Free Workplace Act, where if I took a dime of federal money, I'm guilty, and the person who gave it to me could lose their grant and get fined, I don't know, $250,000 or something. It's kind of insane. Also, I mean, high-profile scientists are responsible not just for their own funding, but for the funding of everyone in their group. And the jobs of all the young people are depending on them to have good relationships with Washington.
Even though I'm not an expert in the subject, what's clear is that the government agencies have been obstructing the objective scientific study of this field. And as a scientist, I feel that's something I should object to, even if it's outside my expertise. In fact, it's being outside my expertise may be an advantage in that it makes it clear that I have no vested professional interest in the subject. I'm just standing up for the proper respect for scientific truth and objectivity in scientific research.
Patricia was ultimately able to reclaim her life with cannabis, but at a huge risk to her career as a scientist. There are so many patients who could be using this medicine. In California alone, it's estimated that 30 million people could be benefiting from the sacred plant. Think about it. How many prescriptions would not get written for costly and toxic pharmaceutical drugs? Millions of Americans are prescribed narcotics every day, including young children. These opioid medications quickly become drugs of abuse, and many victims end up turning to street heroin when they're unable to fill their prescriptions. How could it be that these drugs, which are killing people every day, are 100% legal, but the sacred plant is not? Let's go deeper into the opioid epidemic.
It's important to understand that our system of medicine as operated today is a corporate monopoly. And it's controlled by very powerful companies based in greed and intellectual property control over specific chemicals that they call prescription medications or opioids or painkillers. The greatest enemy to that system is open source medicine. Medicine that grows like weeds, medicine that anyone can access, medicine that anyone can extract, medicine that is compatible with almost every human body without toxic side effects like you find in dangerous prescription pharmaceuticals. So the system of control of medicine, the medical establishment decided long ago that they could not maximize their profits if the people have access to this sacred plant.
According to the Journal of the American Medical Association, about 106,000 people in the US alone die from negative side effects of prescription medications. I wonder how many people have died from cannabis. Because I have yet to find a death specifically from ingesting cannabis, but we're talking 106,000 people just from these legal prescription medications. That alone should wake us up as a country to say, okay, wait a minute, we have a problem here, an epidemic. And I still remember standing in the morgue in Broward County, Florida, and I'm standing in the freezer just surrounded by bodies. And the mortician is telling me that almost every body in this freezer is a result of an OxyContin overdose. Legal OxyContin. And you just look at all the lives that are being lost and ruined to these addictions. And what surprised me the most in my career was the babies being born addicted. That's when I really realized that this epidemic has turned into more of a nightmare. I was standing in the NICU at the East Tennessee Children's Hospital, and they literally had to construct another NICU. So they almost had to double it in size just to deal with all these babies that are being born addicted to prescription medications, inherited these addictions, inherited from their mothers who just couldn't kick the habits. And some of these people just went in because they had back pain or they had anxiety, and they weren't thoroughly told by their doctor all the potential side effects. And because of some people's brain chemistry, when they take an OxyContin to kill their pain, almost instantly they become addicted to it. And something about prescription medications, especially prescription antidepressants, is these medications are more of a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. They're just symptom relievers. They're not really getting in and ever fixing the core root of what's going on. To me, that's not a medicine. A medicine should be something that cures what's wrong with you, not something that you become dependent or addicted to or go into withdrawal symptoms trying to get off of it.
Meet Carl Turley, a former NFL player who almost lost his life to opioid addiction. Unfortunately, many professional athletes fall victim to this kind of addiction as they're often prescribed opioids to deal with sports injuries. Within the NFL, this has become a major issue, with many players demanding legal access to medical cannabis.
and having the experience that I've had with cannabis to tell my story. That came along from a 20-year addiction to pharmaceutical medications because of trying to climb a mountain. My story is one that is solely involved with cannabis on the medicinal side to help treat the ailments that I received from playing the game of football. My wife can attribute my significant decline, cognitively, emotionally, in my personality, to directly after major concussions. A year ago this month, I was diagnosed with pre-onset Alzheimer's and dementia. These were very apparent in my daily life as I was forgetting things constantly. Hand tremors were constant. All of these issues that were related to what I did to my brain playing the sport of football were very apparent in my life since making the commitment to cannabis 100%, where I take 0 synthetic medications whatsoever. It has been a night and day difference in living. I have more control over my life and I'm more balanced and focused than I've ever been. I think, period. 20 kids die every year in youth football, and it's a guarantee due to the lack of attention given to certain injuries. I mean, there is injury in sport, so there are certain things medicine is needed for. Injury in sports is not one of them. You can recover sports injuries, even breaks and dislocations and torn ligaments through many natural homeopathic avenues, cannabis being a main component to that. I was never one to abuse the medicines that were given to me, but at the end of the day, I realized I was on a 20-year addiction to one of these a day, one of those a day, one of that a day, one of this a day, at the end of it all, I'm taking a cocktail that amounts to something chemically that is interacting with my body in many negative ways, as each one of these bottles has a negative side effect. When you interject that, especially into sports that have neurological issues, then you have real problems. And that's what we're seeing in football. We're seeing that in other sports. But it's the constant repetitive nature of head trauma that creates this disease that we now know of, CTE. And so how do you fight against that? You fight against it by giving it medicines that are making it worse, trying to just simply trap it and control it until it has enough energy and enough things that are going on bad around it to break out of its cell and just erupt like a volcano, or give it a medicine that it can calm down, it can treat it, it can deal with this, it can learn to cope and compromise situations. I have so much more ability to do that now than I've ever had because of cannabis. If I would have had this as a medicine, known how to use it as a medicine the way I do today, when I first started playing the game of football, I could have, in my opinion, defeated everything that has interrupted and interfered with my career to where I likely would be retiring just now from playing football like Peyton Manning. We were the same draft class. So, I can only add my story to this conversation in hopes that one day we can have a dispensary next to a Walgreens so that everyone in the general public, when they go to the store, can see the lines that I see now. And what I see in these lines, I see at Walgreens versus dispensaries, are that these people are dying and these people are living. And so I choose to live. And cannabis is going to allow me to do that, I think, much longer than the choices I was given prior to committing to cannabis. This is speaking about a medicine that will save many people. As we know, cannabis was not illegal in this country even until they went on their tirade and rampage against it at the same time of the birth of the pharmaceutical industry.
If you think about what the drug companies do with opioids and other prescription painkillers, is they disconnect you from yourself. They block you from being human because they make it so that you don't feel your pain and you don't address the symptoms and the causes of the pain. And so, but you become addicted to that chemical in order to continue masking the problem.
We are dealing with an epidemic, an opioid epidemic around the country. This is on the press all over the country every week. And I find it a bit perverse that here we are, we're willing to dose patients with a drug that might deal with a pain issue but then cause substantial addiction issues down the road, GI issues, all kinds of chronic medical issues in a patient that is being chronically dosed with an opioid. And yet the community is in some ways unwilling to look at, not necessarily the medical community, but the political community in many ways is unwilling to look at cannabis as an alternative solution. When all of the evidence so far would indicate it is a far less risky compound to use for pain management purposes. Kyle Turley, the opiates almost killed him. And he is making a big case out there and sort of waving his hand saying, please, 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 for all of those professional athletes, for all those people that are addicted to opioids, here is a potential way out. And please, medical community and politicians and everybody, listen. You know, people are struggling with this opioid problem, and we all know it, so let's do something about it.
I am a member of the Massachusetts Medical Society. When medicinal marijuana became on the ballot in 2012, I urged them to educate the physicians about marijuana, to make sure that our patients could know as much as possible about marijuana. The Massachusetts Medical Society made a full court press distributing pamphlets with information. The ballot question lost, or I should say the ballot question passed 63% to 37% in Massachusetts. And I think, again, they are making a mistake by not educating physicians and educating patients, because that's really what needs to happen. My wife and I were asleep, and we received the phone call that no parent ever wants to get. It said, "Do you know someone named Ethan Ruby?" And we said, "Yes, that's our son." He said, "I'm calling from the New York Police Department. He is here in the emergency room of Bellevue Hospital. He's been hit by a car. I think you need to come here now." When Ethan was injured, he was given a variety of opioids, and he was given many, many painkillers. And my perception was he became a different person. He was moody. We were concerned that he was going to end his life. And this is what the pharmaceutical industry and the doctors had to offer us. Luckily, he was able to realize that cannabis helped his central neuropathic pain. And within a few months, he weaned himself off of all of these expensive FDA and DEA approved narcotics and opioids into a medication that he could not overdose on, he could not cause respiratory depression with, and made him happy. Having patients be happy, is that a bad thing? They're gonna be healthy, and they're going to be happy.
Yeah, absolutely.
When he told me all of this, I said, well, if you get arrested, the penal system is not all that wheelchair friendly in Massachusetts, you're going to have to move to Colorado, which he did. When I gave my story to one of the Globe reporters about Massachusetts Walks Again and my involvement in spinal cord injury, he actually sent a reporter out to his home in Denver, and he appeared on the front page of the Boston Globe about 3 days later with his story about how people who really needed relief had to move to another state. This story is not over. Spinal cord injury needs to be cured or made better. Central neuropathic pain needs to be cured or made better. Cancer therapy, and again, all the variety of different ailments need to be worked on. Unfortunately, it's going to be called crowdsourcing, and instead of clinical trials, because people are going to realize they can cure many of their problems without having to go to their doctors. And the pharmaceutical companies are going to realize, wow, we're losing a tremendous amount of our population because nobody's buying our toxic drugs. The ones that cause liver problems, kidney problems, bone marrow problems, and cost our insurance companies a fortune. So I don't think there is a significant downside to making medicinal cannabis legal. I think the downside is personal autonomy and a slap in the face to anybody who wants to tell his government, help me. I have a problem. You're supposed to help me. I'm not supposed to be the victim. And right now, that's what's happening.
Because cannabis has such a full spectrum of constituents in cannabinoids, overdosing on it is very, very difficult to achieve, even if you try to. But it's very easy to overdose on prescription opioids and other chemical painkillers from the pharmaceutical industry. They're very dangerous. The toxicity of those pharmaceuticals is orders of magnitude higher than any potential toxicity from something like a cannabis extract.
Many doctors and research also believe that the answer lies in cannabis. The sacred plant could potentially replace the dangerous, addictive, and expensive pain medications that are destroying so many lives and tearing apart so many families. Perhaps that is why the government and the pharmaceutical industry have put so much effort into keeping the sacred plant out of our hands. But that time is over. We are giving this information for free because we can no longer be ignorant to the truth about the sacred plant. We need to educate each other about the healing properties and fight to remove this stigma. The stigma that cannabis is a dangerous drug is propaganda. You've now seen and heard from scientists, doctors, researchers, and patients that cannabis is a medicine, and it's a medicine we need to reclaim before more people needlessly die from prescription overdoses and chronic diseases. Let's check back with Patricia Crone, who's going to ask her oncologist about using the sacred plant.
Oxycodones. I got 150. Strong stuff. They can lead to stomach problems, to liver damage, and even to death. Much more dangerous than cannabis, which is not being used, is not being developed, and a lot of people may be dying as a result. I'm a skeptic by profession, and I know there are a lot of fake cures out there, but that cannabis fights cancer is not just an old wives' tale. There are quite a lot of scientific examinations, and they all show that cannabis has tumor shrinking properties. What do we have here? Cannabinoid, endocannabinoids are possible preventatives of common disease, including cancers. You have Aberdeen School of Medicine and Dentistry. It's very good to know that there is this potential. Oh, wait a minute, look here. National Cancer Institute. Possible effects of cannabinoids include anti-inflammatory activity, blocking cell growth, preventing the growth of blood vessel supply tumors. Laboratory and animal studies have shown that cannabinoids may be able to kill cancer cells while protecting normal cells. That's the potential that we all want to have developed. The National Cancer Institute is a government-sponsored institute, highly respectable, at the National Institutes of Health. It can't be more official than that. What do I do? Should I or shouldn't I accept whole brain radiation? If they promise that they would cure me with this radiation, of course I would accept it, but they don't. It's prolongation of life, and it's prolongation of life at a cost. And I'm going to ask my oncologist, Dr. David Sokol, about my situation.
We've spoken about it before, that, this is probably not curable at this point.
But I am very, very keen to avoid whole brain radiation because of the cognitive damage. I really, really enjoy working, as opposed, to buying more time but not functioning.
The way you usually work or concentrate, there probably would be some drop off in your efficiency.
And that's permanent.
It can be, but most people are quite functional after the radiation.
But they can't remember anything.
Well, they're not walking around like, they don't know who their family is or...
No, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about my ability to do the work I'm doing, which is the greatest pleasure in my life.
Yeah. There might be some change in that.
How long does whole brain radiation delay the onset of symptomatic tumors? I mean, at the moment, I'm not symptomatic. It is calculated that I will probably be in a couple of months, maybe 3 months.
I'm not sure that I have the report. Let me see if I have the report.
They're probably 3 millimeters.
Right now, they're very small spots, so they're like 6 of them or something. So in terms of where to go from here, let me just start by saying the radiation is probably more effective at buying time if the smaller the amount of tumor that there is to treat.
But I have this plan for delaying for a month. Then I want to ask you, do you know this study? This is right bang relevant to me.
Cannabinoid, I see, okay. I don't know the study. And this is sort of in, animal models. So a lot of things that seem to work in animal models don't work in the human people.
I know.
So, that's probably about all I can.
Yeah, this is the National Cancer Institute, which I assume you accept as a reputable source.
Yeah.
And as you can see, there is a whole discussion there of the anti-tumoral effects.
Yeah.
And the reason why I want to have a month is I want to try it. You don't smoke it, you make it a highly concentrated oil.
Okay.
And you eat it.
Okay.
Doesn't sounds very nice. Probably isn't very nice.
Okay.
But and
I'm not sure where you get it.
I know that's my problem.
Okay.
How much am I risking by making this experiment myself? That you cannot tell. I can understand that.
It's really hard to
But I think it might be worth it. I mean, from my point of view, it might be worth just. I mean, I'm a goner. I have an awful lot to lose. Yeah. So.
Well, I wish I could say you really don't have to worry about that, but as you know, you do.
I don't really know what else to.
So I guess, as I understand, your plan would be to you're going to do what you want for a month.
Yeah.
And then decide about the radiation. That sounds fine.
Pharmaceutical companies, they do have a fantastic business model if you look at it without a conscience. Okay, so just from a business perspective, pharmaceutical companies are publicly traded companies. They only have one job. Their one job is to maximize shareholder profits because they're publicly traded. Their job is to make money. And if they can make money by selling drugs that then create a symptom that then they can create another drug to treat, they've got an endless, perpetual cycle of future revenues. And that's why the pharmaceutical companies make more money than the oil companies. People don't realize that the top pharmaceutical companies, when you combine their revenues, they make way more money than the top oil companies.
With all of the open source research into cannabis today, there are hundreds of different strains that each have special medicinal properties. Each one is a gold mine of natural medicine. Each one has a specific place in a medical context. And if we are wise about our economic futures and our health futures and the future of our freedom, then we will embrace cannabis as natural medicine throughout our healthcare system. Because we have to prioritize patient healing over corporate profits.
In this episode, we revealed how the plant acts upon our internal endocannabinoid system to reduce anxiety, pain, and PTSD. We learned about the various compounds in the cannabis plant and how they all work together to create what is known as the entourage effect. We heard powerful personal testimonies of the effectiveness of cannabis to treat pain without side effects or addiction. Our next episode is going to be a powerhouse of information. I'm really excited about episode 3. We'll meet children suffering from epilepsy and see how cannabis provided the miracle that their families were praying for. We'll meet patients with breast cancer and MS who are successfully treating themselves with the sacred plant. We'll travel to Israel to meet the famous scientist Raphael Mechoulam, who was the first scientist to isolate active compound THC in the 1960s, and he's been a world-renowned expert in cannabis research for the past 40 years. We'll learn why Israel is at the forefront of medical cannabis research and how their federal program was developed. We'll continue to follow the story of Patricia Crone and see if she's able to find a source for cannabis oil she desperately seeks to save her life. Please join us for episode 3. It's going to be a powerful and illuminating episode that you will not want to miss. God bless you. I invite you to join our movement, support our mission, and help us save lives. We're a small company that's committed to the truth and to helping humanity. Since we don't have the unlimited resources that Big Pharma has, we need to work together to educate and empower more people about the healing benefits of the sacred plant. When you support our mission by owning the complete series today, you allow us to continue research, interview, expose, and share this knowledge with the world for free. If you learned something, been inspired, want to watch it again, share it with a loved one, or just love how it feels to support a good cause, consider owning the sacred plant, Healing Secrets Exposed today. Simply click the banner below to join the movement and support our mission. Thank you in advance. It's people like you who are truly helping to change the world.